we have to keep in mind that that might be good for you, but it's not good for everyone.
April 14th, believe it or not. And I am live here. My name is Jeff. If you don't know me, I've got Mr. Sheldon Aikens on with me. Sheldon, super awesome to have you on this morning. We're going to dive into who you are and what you do and everything and really get into your head this morning. I think there's going to be a lot of value here. But I wanted to first jump on, make sure I got to get my phone up, make sure I can see your guys' comments coming in. If you are watching on YouTube or listening on the podcast, obviously this is pre-recorded. The best way to get into the conversation and chat with people and our awesome guests like Sheldon is to get into the private Facebook group. So you can go to teachbettergroup.com or search Teach Better Team on Facebook to get that. So I see some people jumping in and saying, good morning, yet my app is not showing me that we're live yet. So that's interesting. All right, so let me get in here so I can see who is chatting right now. And here we are. Here we go. Let's go. Well, you're looking good on there, Sheldon. I really like that background, man. Good morning, Brianne. Good morning, Kelly is on. Joe's watching. All right, good to see you. Joe says, good morning, Jeff. He apparently doesn't want to say good morning to Sheldon, so I'm going to give him trouble. Deborah, good morning. How are you? Good to see you. If you are commenting, always great to throw your name in there. I am watching on my phone, so I can see you. So if you see me looking down, don't worry, guys. I'm not ignoring Sheldon. I'm just looking for you. All right, so it's in there. So if you have a chance, if you have a question, you have something you're struggling with, throw it in the comments. We'll do our best to talk through it. We're gonna get into things here. Sheldon, we first connected, I think, on Twitter. I don't even know when. I'm not even trying to guess. You were fairly early on in the podcast. I don't remember what episode. I really should have looked this up. I should have been better prepared, but I'm not.
I think it's 103.
103. I love that you remember that. That's great.
I think.
So okay, that's not super early on. It's like, right in the smack in the middle of everything. So I think we just finished. I just put out 163 or something like that. So you were, right around 100, 103. Really great episode. We chatted. It was a really good one. We enjoyed it. We got along really well. We've been talking more since then. We connected on Voxer. We just stayed in contact. It's been really a pleasure to just always be connected to you. I was excited to bring you in here because of your expertise and your focus so much on equity, and I think how that's being highlighted right now and such an important topic. So I do want to talk about that a little bit too. For those that are participating here in the group, for those that are listening on the podcast, for those that are watching on YouTube right now, would you mind sharing just a little bit about yourself, what your role in education, where you're at, a little bit about your backstory? You do have a unique role in where you're at and the type of school you teach in. And I really like that, and I think it's going to bring a really cool perspective here. Really quick, Joe says, good morning, Sheldon. Sorry, I didn't know your name before Jeff said it. I got you, Joe. Good morning, Jennifer. Morning, Alex. Good morning, Candace. Good to see all of you. Okay, now Sheldon is going to introduce himself. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're at, and let everyone just kind of get to know you here.
All right. Thank you, Jeff. So I am, and it's always a pleasure to talk to you, by the way. So I appreciate this time that you're allowed to.
Oh, I know it's a pleasure. Like, no, sorry.
I need her help. Okay. So I'm Dr. Sheldon Aikens. I live in Idaho, man. There's not a lot of brothers out here. So I'm representing the 0.8 for the state. And I work on a reservation, a Native American reservation here. It's called Fort Hall, and I'm a special education director. So great school that I work with. I kind of wear two hats in that sense because it's a small tribal school. So I'm the district level, and I'm also the school level special education professional there. Great opportunity. I've been working with the tribes represented for about 4 years now. When I initially came to Idaho, I came finished my doctorate, thought I was supposed to be a professor. So I went and got a job at Idaho State University and realized I really missed the kids. And just recently went back about a year and a half ago to K through 12. And that's working with the tribes full time. I have been working with them kind of part-time-ish through the university as a college and career advisor for a agency called Trio. So that's where how I landed up here, because I never thought I'd end up in Idaho. But so that's what I do by day. And in addition to that, I am the founder of the Leading Equity Center. I also have a podcast, Leading Equity, and that's what I do. So right now we're doing everything online. So webinars, online courses. I actually have a free course available. I know that Teach Better Academy does as well on online teaching. So I have one as well. And I really try to stress the equity focus when it comes to how we're providing online learning to our students. So that's, again, available on my website, leadingequitycenter.com.
Loving it. Good morning to Brianna, Evan. Evan Whitehead's on. Evan, we just launched his episode just a couple of days ago. Great episode of Teach Better.
What's up, Evan?
All right. Ronnie Reinhardt says, good morning from Ohio. Megan's watching. Adam's watching. Good to see all of you. So where can we get, you did a virtual summit not too long ago, which was so powerful and packed with value and information all around equity. And then the online course, that's all over at the website. You can get to everything from there, right?
Yep. Leadingequitycenter.com.
Okay. Awesome. Loving it. So, I love, I'm going to have you share the story because I think anyone who doesn't know you, I think this is a really, a very cool story. Let's real quick. Evan does say, good morning, Jeff and Sheldon, two of my favorite podcast hosts. Great to see both of you together. Oh, I love it, Evan. He's such a good guy.
I know, right?
Such a good guest. So much value in his podcast with us. So, he says, what's up, Sheldon? So your story of going down to, if I remember, St. Croix? St. Croix, right? Can you share that story? I really enjoy it because I love the perspective you have on it and the lesson you learned. Would you mind sharing that backstory? That was obviously before Idaho. Was that your first teaching job or?
Yep. So I'll share the story.
Take us there. Yeah, take us there with you.
So okay. So I finished my teaching credential, finished college, all that good stuff. And I was in a good position. I had a job working at a call center. I was a supervisor there. And I was in the resolutions department. And if you don't know about the resolutions department, we're the ones that if you ask for a supervisor, they get sent to us. So we always deal with all the worst calls, I want this for free or blah, blah, blah. I'm getting cursed out day in, day out. It really built me up, to deal with people because, without that experience, I wouldn't be able to kind of navigate the way I navigate now, just from that customer service oriented perspective. But I remember sitting at my house with my brother. We're playing video games, and I'm like, I'll be honest with you, I don't really feel like going to work, and they've changed some things around in our job, and it's not looking good. But I spent the whole summer working this job, working it full time, doing overtime. I didn't look for any teaching jobs at all. I'm thinking this, I got my bachelor's, but this is probably what I'll do. And it wasn't going well. And I started thinking, okay, maybe I should look for a teaching job. But it was August at this time, and like all the teaching jobs were gone. And I'm sitting there playing. I want to say I was playing Madden because that used to be the game. And I'm sitting there playing with my brother, and I get a random phone call from a superintendent in the Virgin Islands, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm a superintendent out in the Virgin Islands. I just dropped my son off at your college that you just graduated from, and I need a history teacher. Are you interested?" I'm like, "Yes, of course." Well, Virgin Islands? Did you say Virgin Islands? And I'm like, "Yeah, let's go." So I'm on my way over there. I pack my things immediately. I'm out there and I'm enjoying the island life. It's really cool being in the islands, being Black. I blended in and it wasn't until I started talking, then people start recognizing, wait a second, you're from the States, you're a Yankee. And I'm like, okay, cool. They found me. But it was one day I got my roommate, he came up to me and said, "Yo, Sheldon, all of the students here are telling me that you're like the rudest teacher ever." I'm like, "What are you talking about? What happened?" He's like, "What do you say when students ask, say good morning to you, or people say good morning or good afternoon to you? What do you say?" And I'm like, yo, what's up? Man? How y'all doing? How y'all feeling? What's going on? How you living? Right. And that's how I respond, because that's what I'm used to talking in the States. He's like, "No, in our culture, if someone says good morning to you, you say good morning back. If someone says good afternoon to you, you say good afternoon. Whatever they ask, say to you, you say it back to them. That's our culture." And it was that moment that I was like, oh, I would be considered rude. No, to me, I was thinking, I'm being myself, and being myself in this space wasn't appropriate, culturally appropriate.
Mhm.
And I learned that lesson, and that was like 10 years, 11 years ago now. And I s- I didn't know about equity. I didn't know about cultural responsiveness. Like, those terms hadn't came across my purview yet. But that was that moment when it clicked, and it was like, even if I'm around black folks, I still have to be culturally responsive. Yeah, I grew up in Texas, and I know all these things and slangs, and I listen to certain music and genres which were similar to the stuff that the students that I was working with at the time were doing. But there was those little pieces of culture that I just didn't have yet.
Yeah.
And that was the moment where I was just like, okay, I'm all in. I dove in, like literally dove into the beach, dove in. Like, I started kayaking. I started, participating in all the festivities, going to all the cultural events, and just really learning about their culture. I had the fortunate, I was a history teacher, and I was fortunate enough to be able to teach Virgin Islands history. And I really dug in. Like, okay, they gave me a textbook, but I went beyond the textbook. I'm like, I want to learn. How did you end up here?
Mhm.
What was the background? What do you like to do? What are, like, I really got into my students and really took that time to learn. And that's really the foundation of the equity work I've been doing since. It's just that one moment where it was like I was being rude and had absolutely no clue that I was being rude to folks. And that happens a lot in our field, right? Because
Mhm.
we came up a certain way. We have our own experiences. We have our influences, our family, and the customs and our beliefs that we do, but they're not always the same as our students. And if we aren't attuned to that, if we're not actively thinking, okay, how do I look at things from my students' lens, from their family's lens, from the community that I'm serving, from that lens, as opposed to instilling my beliefs, my culture, my perspectives, what I've been used to all this time. Like, how do I really shift that lens? And that's really where I started doing this work.
I love that. I always enjoy that story of yours. Evan Whitehead says, "Great story. Cultural competency, cultural responsive, even applies within the same racial ethnic groups. It goes beyond similar physical characteristics. The ability to learn and grow true growth mindset." So curious. So if you are listening, you're watching on YouTube, and you're wondering where the comments are coming from, this is in our private Facebook group. So if you're not here with us live, you need to get into the group, teachbettergroup.com, or search Teach Better Team on Facebook. If you are listening, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching on YouTube. Here with Sheldon Aikens. And Sheldon, so let me ask you now. So then you go from there, and you went from there to the reservation in Idaho, correct?
Yeah, fast
Or
forward years later.
so did you were there similar moments when you got the reservation, or were you? I mean, I assume you were a little bit more prepared to be ready to dive in before anything happened. But did you have any of that sort of cultural shock of, oh man, I wasn't prepared for this either, or I really like? I assume there was another learning curve there as well, as you really had to dive into that culture and be aware of what's going on there. Was that the case?
Yeah, so that's a good question, Jeff, because okay, so I went to the Virgin Islands. I blended in. It wasn't until I started talking, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even once I started learning the culture, if I didn't say anything, I was good, right? I could still participate in events, I could still do things, but I was still black and I was still accepted from that sense. I was
Mm-hmm.
a cultural outsider in a sense of not being from the island and not understanding initially all of the island life. And one thing that's funny to me is, they speak English in the Virgin Islands, but a lot of words mean different things. I'm the one with the accent at this time, right? So people can't understand me and I can't understand them, and we're both speaking English.
Yeah.
And now when I'm in Idaho now, working on a reservation, I'm still a cultural outsider, right? I'm still not a part of the tribe. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not Native American and I'm not indigenous in any way, right? So there are things that I had to learn, and a lot of it was trust and developing trust. Like, who is this guy? Why are you here? What are your intentions? Because, historically, our indigenous brothers and sisters have had um, atrocities that have. I mean, they're on a reservation, right? You
Hmm.
know, I live on their land right now, and I had to understand that even though I didn't choose to end up here, going back to ancestry, you know, my people were brought here, but there's still an understanding of, okay, who is this outsider, and why is this outsider working with my children? You know, my child, my grandchild, uh, people that are, you know, my family, my cousins, you know, those kind of things. So I think it's really was important for me when I first arrived and I first started doing the work here was to really just be open and honest and say, hey, listen, I'm here because I want to support your students. I'm here because I really do care and I want to learn. And I didn't just instill all of my, you know, this is me, this is Sheldon, you know, accept me for who I am kind of mentality like I did when
Hmm.
I first went to the Virgin Islands. It was more on how can I learn from you? What are some of the like what does this mean? Why are you using cedar? Why are you using sage? What is that? What is this ceremony? Tell me more. And it's been really been impactful for me. I've gone to a lot of powwows which are like if you ever get an opportunity, and I say this to your listeners and those watching, you know, if you ever get an opportunity, especially if you get invited to a powwow, please go. They are some amazing experiences that I've had watching them dance, watching the drum. You know, I naturally rhythmic. I like to move to a beat and
Hmm.
and listening to the drums go. I'm having a good time. I'm having really like a lot of fun. I've been invited to be a judge of the powwow dances. And I'm like, oh, I don't know. I don't really know what I'm looking for or where's the rubric? And but they're like, no, we really want you to judge. Like, so you start to get accepted when they really see that you're genuinely doing this work without any savior complex. You're coming in because not that I feel like I'm better than them or my people are better than them or any of those kind of things. It's just a genuine empathetic approach to learning about another culture that's different than mine.
Hmm. That's such a cool journey. Brian Zwimke says, "Good morning, TBT. Good morning, Brian. Good to see you." So, Sheldon, let's switch now more to the current state of things. So obviously a lot has changed recently, and that's one of the reasons we're doing these daily drop-ins. We're doing these Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday every morning, 8 a.m. Eastern time, and they're all. This is meant to support anyone listening, anyone watching, anyone commenting. Obviously, a lot of shift, and there's clearly and rightfully a lot of talk around, a lot more talk around, a lot of focus, a lot of spotlight on equity and equity issues right now in education due to how we've had this shift. Can you share with us sort of your experience over the past? I can't remember. I don't know when Idaho decided to shut down and everything there, but sort of how is that working with you and your students and the families that you're serving there as far as access, and how are you guys transitioning? What did you go? Are you fully virtual? How are you handling all this?
Yeah. Apparently people don't like to visit Idaho. So it's not a lot to do, I guess. So we were kind of one of the last states to go into the whole lockdown mode. I mean, a lot of the other heavily populated
Mhm.
states, you know, they've been in lockdown for maybe, I don't know, months or so. We're kind of just weeks in. Uh,
Mhm.
so on a reservation, what we have done is, you know, we've opted to do packets, and just because we not everyone does have internet access or devices to accommodate the online learning, so we do have Zooms that we're doing, our teachers are doing, and we also have the Google Classroom that we're working with. But primarily, we're doing packets. As a matter of fact, I think yesterday we just delivered our next set of packets, and when we were in our staff meeting yesterday, our principal was saying, let's move to 10-day packets, because you know some of the challenges with the packets is how do we deliver the
Yeah.
packets to folks in addition to the grab and go meals that we're doing, because a lot of our students depend on the free the breakfast and the lunches, and so but we want to keep our staff safe in addition to our students safe in this time, so we're looking at maybe doing every 10 days as opposed to every week when it comes to the packets. But it's a challenge. It's definitely a challenge because, you know, as I'm a special education director, And, we have paraprofessionals that have been working really hard to keep up with our students and make sure our students are on track and keeping up with their schoolwork. However, it's a challenge just being able to connect and communicate with folks. So that, obviously there's some things there that we're all trying to figure out. I'm trying to figure some things out, like how do I do an IEP over the phone? How do I keep my students that have speech language services? How do I keep them with that service and do a teleservice, but they don't have internet? So can that be done over the phone, or can that be done? I don't want the kids to burn up their cell phone data plans with speech language services. If you have occupational therapy or physical therapy, how do we do that? Again, if there's no internet access at the home, and it's not just on the reservation. I mean, we obviously nationwide, worldwide, probably there's a lot of similar challenges that are occurring where we're just trying to figure out how do we support our students who do not have all the resources and everything, the bells and whistles, and they're ready to go. At my house. So I'm a parent as well, right? So I got a fourth grader, I got a first grader, and we don't have school supplies. Like some of the assignments that my son, for example, he's in the first grade, cut out this work, cut out this paper and glue them on, or color this and color that, or I don't have crayons, right? They're at his school, right? Mm-hmm. I don't have scissors or glue. So I'm trying to bring out the masking tape and trying to tape everything, help him tape all it on to the paper for his worksheet. Or I'm trying to just say, look, man, just shade that pencil, man. That's your color right there. Because that's what we have available in the house.
Yeah.
And so it's not just, where I'm working at, but it's also just our schools, our houses, our families are impacted in this way. And it's a challenge. I mean, I kind of worry about some of the financial pieces. This is kind of the big focus for me, for a lot of our families, in addition to the special education, English language learners. Those are really, I think, are the ones that are getting hit the most with the, our low income, special needs, and those kind of things are getting hit the most.
Yeah. It's so tough to figure out and to try to acknowledge it and then find a way to do it. And then you think of someone, people would look at you and say, oh, it's a teacher. He's probably got everything he needs at home for his kids. And here you're going, man, I don't even have glue. I'm not even ready. You know what I mean? Like you never know where people are, and you got to try to plan for all of that, all the different situations. Harvey's on here, says, I got inspired by these sessions and finally managed to connect with my students through WhatsApp group. That is awesome. He's been on with several different, dropped in on comments on several different one of our sessions. Harvey, I can't remember where you're located, but if you can let us know, I can't remember right now. I believe he's in India, but correct me if I'm wrong. And has been struggling because most of his students don't have any access. Yeah. And he's trying to just, how do I continue to be connected to them? So I love that he's figuring out through WhatsApp so they can use their phone data and stuff like that. So teachers just having to get creative all over the world. Brianne says, my son has OT and PT last night on Google Meet. So that's awesome. She said she's so impressed by our teams. So with your Zooms and your classroom stuff, are you using that just as like an optional thing right now because you have the packets? Is that just optional, like just offering the opportunity for them to connect, or how is that working? Like, how are you utilizing that right now? Because it sounds like obviously you're focusing on the delivery of the content is via the packets because not everyone get that. So how are you using like your Zoom meetings and video and Google Classroom and stuff right now with your team?
Yeah. So initially, again, we're all trying to figure things out. I think initially we said, we still want to have, our kids miss us. We miss our kids. And so we're trying to connect with them as best as we can. And so the Zooms are more of a reinforcement optional type. It's not required, mandatory. And we have them like 2 or 3 times a week per class. I think it's more like 2 times a week. Okay. And that's kind of how they're connecting. And again, if students can make it in, they can make it in. They can get some extra support from that sense from their teachers. But we're not penalizing our students who are not connecting on Zoom. And I think that's a big thing that we have to be mindful of. We're not penalizing students who aren't bringing in their packets because we understand there's so many different variables that are happening that we don't know.
Mm.
Families aren't going to always share with you, this is what I'm dealing with right now, because, people are private,
Yeah.
and they're not necessarily wanting to share these, or talk about it, or what's happening at home. And so we're not penalizing students who aren't connecting on Zoom. We're not penalizing students who aren't doing their packets. We're actively providing packets, and we're grading what comes in a sense. But those students who aren't bringing it in because maybe they have no device or one device that they're sharing with three other siblings, or they don't have a home at this point. We had to keep in mind. So on a reservation, a big source of income is the casino that's here. But the casino has shut down. The hotel has shut down. And those were like primary revenue streams. I mean, they have events, they have concerts at the casino. I mean, they have all these different things that bring in money for the tribes. And when you had to shut all that down, and you have a good portion of my students whose parents or guardians work at the casinos, and now they're not able to get that same amount of work that they were getting before, that obviously impacts the family. So again, I think one of the things that we have to be mindful of, and the things that we were talking about yesterday in our staff meeting, was we're not going to penalize our students who do not turn in work. It might be frustrating for a teacher when they put all of this package together to go and make the copies, they create the lesson plans. But at the end of the day, the students are on their own.
Mm-hmm.
They're not necessarily, they don't have the teacher in their class. They're not in a classroom to get the work done, and they can, raise their hand. That's not available, right? So they still have the reading assignments. They have all these things that we're sending home, or math reinforcement. And I could watch a Khan Academy if I have access, but if I don't even know where to go, or if I'm just, again, I need help from a teacher, then, and it's not there. So how can we really say that, okay, well, you get an F because you didn't turn anything in? Yeah. So I think that's really important. On our end, on the special education department side, we have the Remind app, and we sent that out initially. It was cricket for like the first week. And we're like, you know what? No one's using this. We need to actively reach out to our students, sitting there waiting by our phones, hoping that someone will send us a text is not the most effective way. We need to actively reach out to our students on our caseload, check in on them, check in with, call the parents, not just call the students, but call the guardians and ask them, hey, how's it going? How's Johnny doing in class? Is he getting his work done? Does he need any help? Does he need support in this subject? And we're actively doing it, as opposed to just trying to wait for someone to contact us and reach out to us, because again, we don't know what's happening at home. And, they may not be able to, or may not want to reach out to folks. Mm-hmm. So we have to actively do that and engage with our students in that sense.
Yeah. And I think you touched on several times there, is that you don't know what's going on at home. You have no idea. Even a home or a student that appears to have full access and everything that he or she needs may not have the stability at home, because they lost their job. They're dealing with who knows what they were already dealing with before all of this, right? Mm-hmm. And so having to keep that in mind is really important. So then, are your your grade in what comes in, is that grade in just shifting more of a heavier focus on just feedback versus actual grades and percentages? And
we decided yesterday to kind of take the students. So I pitched to them, because we were talking about, okay, what do we do with these packets? Because I'm getting some, I'm not getting all of them. What do I do with this? And I pitched to them. I said, listen, let's look at where the students were at prior to us going on break, right? So we looked at the midterms and say, okay, this is where the students were at midterms. And we're going to say pass or fail, or sorry, not pass or fail, pass or incomplete. So if students that were failing their midterms and they bring in their packets and we can grade the work and help them out in their grades, then we'll do that. So that's kind of where we're at now, is kind of looking at students that were kind of behind, or just weren't there yet. Maybe they were just right on the edge, or whatever they're able to bring in. That's the work that we're really looking at and saying, okay, how can we help them out with their grade, because they did do this work. And so we're assessing it that way. And again, we're still doing the packets. We're reducing the amount of workload that our students were getting. Again, from the beginning, we're just trying to figure things out. So it was kind of hard to tell how much work do we give in this packet, how much time should be allotted for my class, in addition to the 5 other classes that our students are doing with this packet, and not overwhelming them. Because I mean, 5 days worth of work with 6 different classes, that packet can get really thick,
Oh
right?
yeah. Yeah.
And can be overwhelming to our
Yep.
students, in addition to everything else that they have going on. So we're looking at reducing the amount of work that we're giving, and again, we're being very graceful, very lenient when it comes to what comes back and what doesn't come back.
Brian says, learned the other day I could say, hey, Google, play Teach Better Talk or Teach Better podcast. Thanks for being an awesome resource. Thanks for that, Brian. You can say that to Google or to Alexa. Say, hey, Alexa, play Teach Better Talk podcast, and it will play. So that's awesome. Appreciate that. Alex Valensek says, it makes me sad to see teachers out there who are trying to justify penalties or anything right now. We all need to be graceful.
Yep.
I appreciate that, Alex. That's right. And I think we've been hearing, grace just thrown around. That word has been used so much right now. Grace for our students, grace for ourselves, grace for the parents, grace for our admins, which I think is really important for us to continue to focus on. Just like what you've been talking about, what you guys are doing there is just continually trying to adjust and think through, okay, what are we doing? How is it working? How's it being received? Are they getting what they need out of it? What can we adjust? How do we adjust the way we think about the grades and things of that nature? So, as you've had conversations, I assume that I'm not the first person to talk to you about equity and the time like these and stuff. What's and we've already kind of touched on this. Maybe we already kind of covered it with the whole just not knowing what's going on. But for you, what has been looking outside beyond the reservation, just into the country? Where is the biggest struggle that you think right now that educators are dealing with right now? As far as equity is concerned, is it just that the simple we don't know what they already have going on at home, or
I would say within the last week, the most conversations that I've been having is, so a lot of teachers and school districts have said, we're not going to give grades at all, right?
Mm-hmm.
So more of a time for enrichment, more of a time for just kind of keeping a sense of community with the classroom and engaging with each other virtually. That doesn't always sit well with parents, especially parents who are more affluent, who do have everything at home, who do have all the school supplies, the scissors, the glue, and the devices and the internet access that's streaming hard and strong. Those parents. So I have a lot of district folks that have been reaching out to me like, what do I do? Because we're about equity and we're telling everyone we're not going to give grades. But we have parents who may be looking at a district next door, or they may be feeling like, well, my child is, this stellar 4.5 GPA and they're on their way to a college or a university and trying to get full ride scholarships, and they're taking a hit and it's not fair. Mm-hmm. So I think that's one of the main conversations that I've been having over the last couple of weeks is, okay, you're telling us we're not giving grades, but then I'm having a lot of pushback from parents who say, no, we need to be giving grades. No, we need to be giving more work. The first week of school, when we went online, there was plenty of work that they were getting, and now it's been drastically reduced. And I don't think my child is being challenged at this point, and I have a problem with that. It's not fair to me. It's not fair to us. I want people to understand that colleges and universities understand, and they are providing grace as well with their admissions process. This overall is there needs to be an understanding that what we have going on right now is not adequate online teaching. I mean, the textbook, like, people go to school to be able to be instructional technologists, to teach online, and transitioning from a traditional brick and mortar classroom to an online space within a matter of weeks with little to no training. And let's say you get some training. I mean, how much training is going to prepare you for a semester's worth of work if you have no prior experience? So if we're still saying, you know what, you're supposed to do this high, intense, rigorous coursework that our students are supposed to have at home online, then it's not being equitable. So we have to be lenient and understanding that our schools, our universities, our NCAA, all that stuff, all those things are understanding because we understand that this is a pandemic, or is it epidemic, pandemic,
Pandemic, yeah.
and we understand, and there's grace all over. So it's hard sometimes for parents who really want their kids again, have all the resources and access, and like, okay, we need to be doing this hard and strong, but we have to keep in mind that that might be good for you, but it's not good for everyone, and that's the main conversations I've been having. I've read a lot of articles that say don't even give grades. Just don't give grades. Not on some, just chop this semester or quarter up as just kind of like one of those things where we just got to let it go. So still provide something to our students to keep them engaged academically and socially, because our students really do need our support. Another conversation that I'm having a lot, Jeff, is what do we do after this?
Yeah.
Right? Okay. At some point, I don't know when, but at some point, we're going to go back to our classrooms. We're going to go back into our buildings, and our students who have experienced a lot of, months of non-academic support, because we got to think about summer school, right? Students sometimes will get more enrichment or catch up during the summer months where they're physically going into a classroom and doing their summer school work. That may not be there, and we may still be kind of trying to do this virtually. And again, that may not be as adequate. And so we're going to have months of gaps of students. So how do we reintroduce the work? How do we go? We can't start day one in August or September or October, whenever we go back to school, as if businesses, we have to provide some sort of onboarding for our students. And again, mental health support for our students, and not just for our students, for our teachers, right? I'm a parent, you're a parent, and we're educators, and we're trying to figure these things out ourselves. And we're trying to figure out, okay, I'm stressed out because I've been trying to give online teaching. I've been trying to find videos that have closed captioning for my students who are hearing impaired, or I'm trying to find videos that have the language that my students speak. If my students are first language is Spanish, and I got to try to find videos that's available in translations, or something is available for them. All of those things are stressing us out as educators. And so how do we acclimate our teachers back into our classrooms settings and all those things? So a lot of these conversations now is like, okay, this is where we're at. This is what we kind of decided on as far as what we're doing remotely or packets or whatever it is. But then what do we do after we have our students return back to class? And a lot of questions are out there as far as how does that work? How does that look with all these gaps?
Yeah, and I think we've touched on it. Alex mentioned it specifically too. The word grace comes to mind, and that whenever we get back in there, like we have to have grace for our students, for our staff, for us, because there are going to be these gaps, and we need to figure out. We have to allot time, like you said. It can't go back day one as if it's day one, right? It's day, week, month, whatever, of catching up from what is being lost right now, what is being changed right now, what's being felt right now, right? The emotions and the mentality. And the mental fatigue that everyone's going through. We have to address all that, get everyone back to good first, and then start moving on with what needs to go next. And so that's my hope that we do that. Hopefully it's this fall, and we get back to things, and we're ready to do it. But I think it's really important. And mentioning the summer school too, like that's such a opportunity a lot of times for students to fill gaps that have already formed without a pandemic, right? So now those are going to be larger, and where are they at, and how do we fill that? How do we get that ready? So we're preparing it. We're starting to have a lot of conversations now with schools that we work with and people we work with, and we're starting to put together some content support pieces about that. Like, where do we go from here? What does August look like? How do we get back to this? Like, how do we prepare both for everything going back to quote unquote normal come August, September, or what if it doesn't, or what if it does for a little bit and then it changes? How do we prepare for that so that we're ready to face that challenge in whatever many forms it looks like coming in August and beyond? So good morning to the Kaplans, both Jeff and Christy chiming in from Georgia. Good to see you there. So sorry, did you have something else to add there? So I kind of cut you off there.
Can I just add? So
yeah, go.
And here's the thing. I think obviously a pandemic is not a good thing. However, I think as we're refocusing and start thinking about what we're going to do in the aftermath of all of this, it really could be an opportunity for us to really start thinking about our because do we want to go back to everything that we were doing before? Like, do we want to go back to the traditional systems that we had in place? Because hopefully this has opened up a lot of people's eyes, our administrators, those who are leaders, who, you know, maybe our discipline practices may need to be revised, or we need to look at, okay, if we're gonna think about, okay, how do we get our students caught up, or how do we pick up where we left off? I think this is a great opportunity for us to really start thinking about what changes we can make, not just to prepare for another pandemic or something else, travesty or whatever you want to call it, to come up, but more of how, like, we recognize that we weren't prepared for a lot of our students who weren't in part of the dominant culture, and the dominant culture meaning had access to all of these things, and two parents at home who were able to help them with their schoolwork, and financially sustainable, those kind of situations. So I think this is a great opportunity for us to really start thinking about what does education look like
Yeah.
after when we return, and not just going back to the same old what we've been doing for years, or what our, historically what our schools have been like. But really, we should start engaging in conversations about how we can change and shift things to accommodate all students, and not just the able-bodied students who fit in the normal society or viewpoints of a lot of our educators, as far as what a student should be or behave
Yeah.
or act or speak, those kind of things. We should really start looking at what are the systems that we had in place already that needs to change.
Yeah, I was actually I love that you say that. So I recorded another episode of the Aspire Leadership podcast with Joshua Stamper last night. We've been doing these mailbag episodes, which has been awesome. And Josh threw that question at me of what do I think education is going to look like when we get back to quote unquote normal. And everything that you said was right where I was at. Is like I said, I'm not exactly sure what it looks like, but I know what I hope happens. And what I hope happens is these conversations that we're having right now, and these things that are being highlighted, these gaps, these opportunities are still conversations, and that they stick around until we figure them out, and that we don't spend, we go back in end of August and we spend September, October talking about it and thinking about it, and then come November, it's like everything's back to normal. We just fall back in. I hope that not only the conversations that are going around equity and around what are we looking at, and how we think about grades, and how we think about testing and all this type of stuff. I hope these conversations stay at the forefront, stay highlighted in the spotlight on them, but also that we look at a lot of the things that we had to turn to, and the tools and different shifts in our mindset that had to happen in order to support our students now. And we talk about, when we assess, how can we utilize those back in the quote unquote traditional classroom to better serve our students, to better engage them, to be more efficient, all these types of things. And I think that's going to happen. I hope it does. And we're certainly going to try to continue to drive those conversations, and as I know you will. So I really do hope, I agree with you 100%. I really hope that that's where we are, and that we do see some very big changes when we can get back to stable life outside of school and everything else. We can really focus on fixing these things. I hope that this really leads to that, and that we can have that, some sort of positive pulled out of all this mess. And I hope those conversations are going. So I appreciate you bringing all that and sharing all that. If you are listening on the Teach Better Talk podcast or watching on YouTube, and you are interested in getting in here, asking questions, being more engaged in this with us live, we are live here Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday in our private Facebook group. You can go to teachbettergroup.com or search Teach Better Team on Facebook to get that. These are obviously going on to our YouTube channel afterwards, and then up to the Teach Better Talk podcast as well. So a lot of stuff going on there. You can find everything on Sheldon Aikens over at leadingequitycenter.com, including his free online courses. I don't know, the virtual summit, I don't know if another one of those is in the works sometime in the future. Can someone access that now, or is that limited time? I'm curious. The virtual summit, because
okay. So I actually did.
I'm throwing you on the spot. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's all good. It's live, right? So it is what it is. So I just did one last week on hip hop education, and I did one back in January. I think that's the one that you're referring to.
Yeah.
It was kind of like my bigger one, and they are available on my website. They're not free at this point. Normally, when I do the summits, they're available for 24 hours.
Yep.
You can consume the content. I am looking at doing a summer conference to kind of talk about what we were just talking about as far as the aftermath, what we do afterwards, and how we can rethink our education system and some of the systems that we have in place or had in place, and see what needs to change and how we can go about doing that. So that will be coming out hopefully in July. I'm saying July, with the intentions that hopefully we'll be back in school September-ish at the latest.
Yep.
Of course, everything is kind of tentatively scheduled right now.
Love it. And be sure that you subscribe to Sheldon's podcast, Leading Equity. It's a just so much value on that, and the guests you bring on and the conversations that you're having. So I encourage you, if you're listening or watching or participating, to connect with Sheldon and get connected with him and learn about what he's doing. Twitter is Sheldon Aikens, right? Twitter at Sheldon Aikens, right? Just simple, easy, your name. And everything over at leadingequitycenter.com for all of that. Sheldon, man, I really appreciate you coming on, getting up with us and hanging out and sharing your story and just chatting with me this morning. Really, really appreciated that a lot. Everyone who jumped on and said good morning and asked questions and shared their thoughts, really appreciate all of you. Everyone who's been getting on these, waking up with us every morning, it's been a pleasure. It's our honor. We love all of you, and we're here for you. We're going to continue doing these things Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. Eastern time. So keep chiming in, keep letting us know what you need, so we can keep trying to bring in some awesome folks like Sheldon to give you what you need and support you in any way we can. But I appreciate all of you. Sheldon, appreciate you, man. Always a pleasure, and thank you for your time, man.
Well, thank you for having me, Jeff, and the whole Teach Better team. Y'all are amazing for doing this work. So much kudos to you for the daily drop-ins. I think it's very helpful. We need education. We need that encouragement. And so I appreciate what you're doing, the work that your team is doing. It's amazing. I appreciate you having me on.
I appreciate you, brother. And I appreciate all of you watching, listening, commenting. We're here for you. Stay awesome and have an awesome rest of your week. We'll see you.